Did you know that TV shows can change over time? I know, what a concept. And like many shows that have been around for over 2 decades, Family Guy has changed quite a bit. But what is it about newer episodes of Family Guy that just feels so different from older episodes? Well, we thought it'd be fun to look at similarly themed episodes from both newer and older seasons of the show and compare them to see exactly what has changed for better or for worse. So let's first start with Season 5's Stewie Loves Lois and Season 20's Mr. Act, where both episodes revolve around Stewie really starting to like Lois. Only one's in a pretty wholesome way, and another's in a way that explains a lot. So let's recap what happens in these episodes. In Stewie Loves Lois, Lois wins Stewie's love and respect after rescuing Rupert from a dog attack and stitching him back together.
Lois, I was wrong about you. You're my everything.
Kinda weird it took a near-death experience for you to notice how important she is. Have you even tried wiping yourself? You probably would have died from E. coli by now if it weren't for her.
My, Stewie, you're in a good mood today.
Why shouldn't I be? You saved Rupert's life and I love you for it.
So Stewie and Lois practically become attached at the hip, which seems nice at first, but when Lois can't get a moment of peace, she starts to wish she had gone on birth control a little sooner.
Mama! Mama! Mama!
What?
Hi.
Suddenly, nearly being assassinated by your infant toddler every day sounds a lot more chill. It even gets to a point where Lois starts to fantasize about doing a little murdering of her own. Terrible stuff. She didn't even set the cycle to delicates, that monster. Eventually, Lois realizes she just needs to cut the cord and put a little space between her and her child. Obviously, Stewie handles this very maturely.
Get back in here and love me! Ah! Lois!
I knew getting him that machine gun for Christmas was gonna cause trouble. Don't they remember that old adage? You'll shoot your eye, ear, nose, teeth, and internal organs out. And after Lois only ends up giving him the time of day when he gets hurt, he realizes that her attention might be more conditional than he thought.
You had your chance and you blew it. Well, now you're too late.
I guess it's good he's getting the angsty teen phase out of his system now, rather than later when he's able to operate a car. So this episode introduces a pretty interesting character progression for Stewie as he learns the value of having a mother. But like most kids often do, he doesn't understand boundaries or overindulgence, and eventually the roles of Lois and Stewie become swapped. Suddenly he's the one wanting to be sickeningly affectionate, and Lois is the one who... Okay, well, she doesn't want to stuff him and hang him over the mantle, but she does want her own independence separate from him. This is actually a pretty clever swap of established character archetypes, one that doesn't take a real suspension of disbelief to get across. Plus, it ends in a way that resets to the status quo, but in a realistic way. Lois feels guilty that her ignoring of Stewie made him act out and hurt himself, while Stewie essentially thinks, if you couldn't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. Now let's take a look at Mr. Act, which contains a similar plot, but with an entirely different execution.
Whoa, did we get that European exchange student I saw on TikTok?
So in this episode, Lois gets super ripped, which makes Stewie start to like her a lot more. But not for any new personality changes or for her style of parenting. Nope, this guy's got a type, and now his mom finally fits into it. Great.
Don't you think she looks a little mannish?
Mannish! Yeah, awesome, right?
I'm sure you certainly think so, Stewie. Finally, his fantasy Rupert has come to fruition. Too bad it had to come at an Oedipal cost. So after this development, Stewie wants to start spending a lot of time with the newly buffed Lois, even whining and complaining when he's separated from her.
Okay, I'll tell you what. You can sleep with Mommy in the big bed tonight, okay?
Wow, sleeping in the same bed after the first date? That is not a thought I should be having about mother and son. Why'd you make me do this, Family Guy? But these newfound feelings don't last very long, as all that muscle apparently gets flushed down the toilet.
Where's that rippling hot bod?
Feels good to have my old body back.
And just like that, all romantic tension has been sucked out of the room. Thank you. So even though this plot has a lot of similarities to the plot of Stewie Loves Lois, the execution and intentions behind it are very different. The catalyst for this plot isn't caused by any real emotional pull for the characters. While Stewie's prior beliefs about Lois were challenged in the first episode, this episode mostly just plays into the joke of Stewie's sexuality. While it's still pretty funny to see him do a complete 180 simply due to a few muscles, it doesn't resonate nearly as much, mostly because of where the show sits now. By season 20, Stewie isn't nearly as resentful of Lois, so this flip doesn't feel as impactful as it does in Stewie Loves Lois because the established relationships aren't being as challenged as they were in season 5. Additionally, the ending of the plot in Mr. Act kind of speaks to a big criticism some fans have had about the show not knowing how to end episodes anymore. In Stewie Loves Lois, the status quo is returned to in a believable way that also makes sense for the plot. But in Misdirect, the muscles are just suddenly gone and everything's back to business as usual. By looking at these two episodes, you can potentially see the difference in intent that the older and newer seasons have. While earlier seasons were more inclined to play into character arcs, newer seasons put more of a focus on silly situations and building the comedy off of that. Personally, both have their place in the show, and there's nothing wrong with preferring one or the other. Less romantic subplots between a mom and her son would be nice though, just saying. And now let's look at how Family Guy handles political satire. They do it all the time, and no one has ever gotten angry about it. Imagine that! But if you were to look at a political-centric episode of the earlier seasons and compare it to one of today, you may see both some similarities and some differences. So let's look at Season 9's Excellence in Broadcasting and Season 23's Drunk with Power.
Rush Limbaugh was right all along. Conservative republicanism is the answer.
So in Excellence in Broadcasting, Brian's swayed by political commentator Rush Limbaugh to become a Republican after reading his book.
You should be proud of yourself, Brian. I mean, you sound like a thoughtful American.
And with Brian swinging to the opposite side, that means he gets to meet the figureheads of the conservative movement. And they're handled with as much respect and dignity as you'd probably expect.
Hey, whoo, you are getting heavy.
I know, I'm 64 3/4.
You sure are, slugger.
You know, if you ignore all that war in the Middle East and the housing crisis mumbo-jumbo, old W seems like a harmless little fella. But as soon as Brian starts to push his new views and beliefs on his family, he immediately gets clocked by someone who picks up on his patterns.
Whoever's in power, whoever's successful, you gotta be on the other side or you don't feel like the smartest guy in the room.
Sorry, Lois, but your well-documented and easily provable feelings don't stand a chance against the facts Brian decided to accept a day ago. And since Brian's conservative attitude somehow becomes even more insufferable than his liberal one, Brian decides to move in with Rush so the two can pal around and shoot guns and use gas stoves, or whatever it is those two do.
Hey, I've been reading all your books, and I so 100% agree with you. I mean, what is going on with this country?
You said it, Brian. I mean, it means nothing and doesn't open the door for any meaningful discussion, but you sure did say it. But Brian begins to take these beliefs too far, believing direct action is more worthwhile than trying to win people over to your side through discussion.
But you can't just say that. You gotta lead people there with an intelligent argument so they arrive at it on their own.
Because nobody likes being directly told what to believe. Well, except Brian, of course. That's kind of the whole point. And eventually, Rush is able to convince Brian that these beliefs are not his own, but the product of circumstance.
It's not a coincidence you turned your back on your democratic principles just when the Democrats became the political establishment. All you want is something to fight against.
That's our warrior Brian, always ready to fight against anything he thinks will make him look smarter. So this episode is a great use of political satire on the show's part for a few reasons. Firstly, it's not really about politics. Don't get me wrong, conservative and liberal beliefs are used as set dressing for the story, but really, the episode's about Brian. It's not about his beliefs, but his lack of true beliefs. The show uses the political framing of this episode not so much to criticize either side, but as a framework to criticize the character of Brian, getting more introspective into who he is and what he represents. But at the same time, the show isn't above directly poking fun at political beliefs and figures, evident by the childish portrayal of political figures and absurdist lines.
I suppose we shouldn't be executing children.
You see, you're not really one of us.
It's never really a mystery to what side the writers lean towards, but this episode is a clear attempt at finding a middle ground that criticizes certain ideas without completely destroying their cause by going too far with it. Other episodes, like Mr. Griffin Goes to Washington, are great examples of how the show handled political discourse in a way both sides could laugh at, while also feeling timely and universal. So how does a more modern political episode like Drunk with Power tackle this same idea?
I'm so pumped! I've toured every brewery in the country except this one. I love beer!
So in this episode, Peter becomes buddies with Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, so much so that the two actually end up switching lives.
Justice Kavanaugh? It's him.
If only there were a Supreme Court justice who looked like a clam, then I could easily slide into their role. I could get this country back on track, guys. First by ordering the execution of every seagull. Trust the process, guys. So Peter gets to play a pivotal role in deciding the laws of millions of Americans.
We must not only ban gay marriage, we have to ban straight marriage.
And Kavanaugh gets to be a drunk with no responsibilities. What do you have to major in college to get that job? I might be thinking about going back to school.
Wet t-shirt contests have rules! That's all that separates us from animals!
Well, that and the t-shirts that we may or may not be getting wet. But after a while, the two men decide to go back to their own lives, only after Peter makes an impassioned speech about why the court shouldn't ban gay marriage.
You want to take away their freedom? Let them get married.
Well, see, when you frame it as a way to continue hurting people, then you're speaking their language. So it's pretty clear that political commentary takes a front seat in this episode, being the central focus of the plot while not really being a tool for the characters. By the end, Peter is mostly used as a mouthpiece to criticize the habits of the Supreme Court, but the way the episode goes about it is very direct. And they really hit you over the head with it by using the world's biggest, thickest, most unsubtle hammer ever.
Let's get him back to the Supreme Court of the United States of America, where he serves a lifetime appointment.
This episode really leans into a tell, don't show method of commentary at times, which can be seen as a relatively lazy way of doing political commentary. It's obvious that having a habitual drunk on the court is crazy, you don't have to tell us. Additionally, the caricatures of the judges, especially Kavanaugh, aren't done in service to any real message or cleverness, it's really just a dunk on these people by portraying them as huge idiots. It doesn't really leave a ton of room for discussion to be had, resorting to simply portraying the people they don't like as exaggerated Neanderthals. So unlike the other episode, this mostly just uses politics for pure comedy without it really being in service to a bigger message or character moment. It's a clear example of why many fans have said the show should stay away from politics, but there's more than enough proof that there's a right way to do it. And after you get canceled once, you would like to think it could never happen again. But after you've been canceled twice, you know the Grim Reaper of television could come knocking at your door at any moment. Family Guy is no stranger to having to contend with the changing norms of media, both in the sense of what's expected and what's allowed. But the show is certainly one to dig its heels into the ground and push back at what big studio heads think is best for the show. Family Guy has illustrated this war against the norm on multiple occasions, but one of the biggest differences in execution and time period can be seen with Season 4's PTV and Season 18's Disney's The Reboot.
This must be the FCC overreacting to the David Hyde Pierce incident. They're censoring anything that might be viewed as unpleasant.
So after the FCC starts to get a little censor-happy, Peter decides to create his own television station filled with all the uncensored and raunchy content a sicko could want.
Where you get to watch your favorite shows as nature intended them, with all the violence, swearing, and farts intact.
I don't know, this kinda goes against that little song you guys sing at the beginning of every episode. But then again, what kind of country would we be without our fart jokes? An uncivilized, moralist nightmare country, we'd have to think.
I'm sorry, but you left me no other choice. I called the FCC.
But when Lois attempts to rein in Peter's debauchery by bringing the FCC to town, they decide to not only censor television, but also censor anything they view as obscene.
What are you doing?
Censoring real life.
His chin looks like balls. You want me to cover that too?
Thank you! I know nobody else was gonna ask, but I don't really think I need a reminder of man's most sensitive area every time I see Peter's face. And when even Lois thinks the FCC has gone over the line, the Griffins decide to take the fight to censorship's doorstep, Washington, D.C.
Indecency is un-American.
Oh, yeah? Well, I can prove to you that that's a bunch of bull.
You know, he does have a point. Look around you. Life is surrounded by inspirations of the crude and lewd. It's just as big a part of America's blood as apple pie and high cholesterol.
He's absolutely right. Come to think of it, have you ever looked closely at the Lincoln Memorial?
PTV represents a very important and formative time, not only for Family Guy, but for television as a whole. The show argued for accountability over censorship, leaving responsibilities in the hands of the viewers to decide what they should and shouldn't see, rather than a government agency deciding it for you. This especially hit close to home for Family Guy, as the show is consistently censored and received pushback from organizations like the Parents Television Council. PTV was the show's way of standing its ground, reaffirming that while the show's off-color humor may not be everyone's cup of tea, it had every right to exist. And as we said, the PTSD from being canceled twice probably led to the show donning the boxing gloves this time around. This was a comment on the current state of television that mattered because it mattered to the show. But after being on television for 2 more decades, what else does the show have to say about TV? Well, we somewhat get that answer with Season 18's Disney's The Reboot.
You have been selected to be part of a focus group that could affect one of America's most beloved television shows, Family Guy.
So after the real-life merger of Fox and Disney, the show decided to create a meta-episode revolving around the hypothetical prospect of a Family Guy reboot. Because is anything worth watching if it isn't connected to a universe of sequels, prequels, retellings, and reboots? The first suggested reboot involves putting Lois in the spotlight to make the show more appealing to female audiences.
Well, I'm off to my high-powered job at a fashion magazine, greeting card company, or winery.
I mean, there is a reason why all those Hallmark movies are wildly popular. A reason we can't really understand, but you know, we're sure it's a good reason. But this doesn't seem like enough to really tantalize the mind of the average network TV watcher.
The show was from a woman's perspective, but it still felt like it was written by a man.
Well, what if I told you shut up?
Honestly, that sounds like the show's go-to response to criticism. So if that one's a dud, then how about a reboot that'll reel in a younger audience by making all of the characters hot, muscular, and emotionally tortured? It's about time the show realized that Chris Griffin is the thing bringing all the ladies in.
It's your sister Meg. She's dead.
I have to go.
Yeah, this one is kind of just a hodgepodge of all the shows teens seem to like. It's got attractive actors, it's got mystery, and it's based around lesser-known Marvel characters. Throw in a video of a hydraulic press satisfyingly squishing something and you've got them.
Now one of us will become a breakout movie star and leave the series wrecking it for the rest of us.
But when that doesn't perk up the ears of the focus group, the network tries to show them one more reboot idea, this time focusing on the lives of Chris and other side characters.
Stewie, I'd better go. Trish is giving me that look.
It's actually a little network secret that if you remove all the things people liked about a show, they'll end up liking it more. I know, crazy, right? Don't even ask how many illicit substances you have to be on for that to make sense. But none of these ideas resonate with the group, and honestly, their suggestions aren't much better.
Young Sheldon is good. How about young Family Guy?
How about I murder your whole family?
So this is Family Guy once again poking fun at the current state of television, spoofing the ideas and themes of other shows that were considered popular at the time. And while the threat of a reboot is the conflict here, there's a big difference in the show here versus the show in PTV. They aren't really in the fight. Think about it. Family Guy was on its 18th season, was syndicated, and despite declining ratings, it was still getting renewed for many more seasons. In a way, Family Guy's critique of TV is much different this time around because they don't really have much to lose. The fear of cancellation isn't as prevalent as it was back in season 4, so the jabs it throws at the state of television feel less personal and more like a comedian doing crowd work.
Binge-worthy is not a word, it's a marketing tool. You've been brainwashed, sir.
Not gonna lie, there's probably quite a bit of truth to what this episode says. Not everything has to be binge-worthy. This channel is though, so don't feel bad about watching all our videos. But it's clear that the show doesn't always possess the fighting attitude it had back in the day, because in a way, it's already won. Next is a pretty big topic of contention for fans, and that's how Joe Swanson is portrayed in the show. We hesitate to throw around phrases like character assassination, but this guy might be the Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Family Guy. While Joe started out as a handy-capable hero prone to a few loud outbursts, later seasons of the show really started to reel that back in favor of a more depressive, pathetic characterization. His handicap has become more of a crutch for him as time has gone on, and the difference is night and day when you compare episodes like Season 6's Believe It or Not Joe's Walking on Air and Season 13's #JOLO.
I don't want to hold you back.
Don't be silly, honey. It's just as nice watching other people have fun.
So in this episode, Joe's feeling down about his lack of legs when he believes he can't give Bonnie the life she deserves. He shouldn't be so hard on himself. If I saw someone who could handstand walk like him, I'd throw away all prior relationships and obligations for them.
Thank you.
So Joe decides to get a leg transplant, which is apparently a thing, to allow himself to walk again. I don't know, there's just something about seeing Joe at eye level that's a little unnerving.
Well, what do you think?
Oh my God, you look great, Joe! Holy crap!
And these brand new legs give Joe a new lease on life, as he's ready to use them in every possible way you can use a leg. There's actually a lot, believe it or not. It's one of those body parts you hardly think about.
Come on, ladies, kick your high heels off and get moving. You guys are a disgrace.
He's razzing him, but I almost feel like high heels could work with climbing. It'd be like having a pick on your foot, and you'd look fabulous. But the guys just can't keep up, so Joe decides to start a whole new life with new friends and no Bonnie. You know, the one he did all this for.
I've outgrown you, Bonnie. I need to spread my legs and fly.
Maybe switch to full pants rather than shorts if you're going to be doing all this spreading. So the only way to seemingly fix this is to revert Joe back to his original self, and after the guys can't do it, Bonnie has to step in to save their marriage.
My perfect ass!
Oh, I'm sorry, Joe. I was aiming for your spine.
What is love but taking a few bullets for your spouse? We think they usually mean that figuratively, though. So while this isn't really the most positive portrayal of Joe, it does give him some agency over his disability. Rather than continue to live unhappily, he decides to do everything in his power to do what he believes will fix his problems. It's mostly for himself, but at the beginning, it's at least in the service of Bonnie, who Joe just wants to live a happy, uncomplicated life with. I'd say having to shoot your husband multiple times might fall into the realm of complicated, though. But Joe eventually learns that it's not the legs that make the man, but the man who's attached to those legs. While he continues to have hang-ups about his disability, Joe learns that it'll only hold him back as much as he lets it. Now, Joe does eventually get to that sentiment in #JOLO, but the route he takes to get there is a bit more sad.
Wow. 20 years on the force and no one's ever clapped for me.
So Joe's feeling unfulfilled in his life and decides to start anew, breaking things off with Bonnie and moving into his own apartment. He's pretty much living this meme, but hey, he seems pretty happy about it.
I've never been better. I was living my life all wrong. but not anymore.
So to cap off this new lifestyle, Joe decides to take his friends with him on a road trip to Niagara Falls. It's just one of those places you take one look at and think, wow, isn't life just wonderful and worth living until you pass away from natural causes?
Goodbye, fellas.
Looks like someone didn't read the brochure. Luckily, Joe doesn't succeed at that jump, and good thing too, because if he had just talked to his friends, he could see that life is up. There he goes again.
Joe, wait!
So yeah, this is perhaps the lowest we've seen Joe, where he's become such a danger to himself that he literally needs to be restrained. All because nobody ever clapped for him. Did he even try the Jeb Bush technique? So the guys try to show him a good time, but he really wants to take a dip in the water.
Leader, no!
He must have been a fish in another life because man does this guy want to go swimming. But Joe's recklessness makes his buddies fall into the raging water, which means Joe has to tap into his hero side to save them.
Guys, grab onto my legs!
Got it!
See, this makes me feel less bad about skipping leg day. All you really need is a strong upper body and you're ready to take on the world. So while this episode ends admittedly more positively for Joe than the previous one, there still is a shockingly different portrayal of Joe's struggle with his disability. While Joe was always looking to overcome his struggle, like in older episodes such as Ready, Willing, and Disabled, he never considered giving up. For better or for worse, he was always able to pivot and make do with the cards he was dealt. Even if it led to some pretty low moments, it was honestly kind of inspiring to see a character go the distance and do what he could to better himself. But this Joe? The only thing he's inspiring should not be replicated.
I'm a cop who can't save anyone. I'm a husband in a legless marriage. My whole life is a joke.
Yeah, and that's kind of the problem. Joe's situation can be used for comedic effect, but the punchlines have gotten darker and darker over the years, to the point that there's not really much to admire from the character. We have his past actions, sure, but what does this new version of Joe do to inspire or not portray himself as completely pathetic? Joe is the joke now, which doesn't give him a lot of room to be as layered a character as he once was. Again, this episode does have a good ending that allows Joe to take agency and regain some of his lost confidence, but the portrayals of Joe that come after this continue to lean into the sad sack, incompetent characterization that has become a noticeable far cry from his original iteration. And parody has more or less always been Family Guy's bread and butter. A lot of its humor and setups come from spoofing other well-known stories, and eventually the show decided it could get a lot of mileage by just making episodes that straight parody movies, TV, and literature. And the fan reaction to that has been mixed. It can be fun to see something you know and love parodied, but sometimes it can feel like a crutch that does half of the job of telling a story for you. That being said, the older and newer seasons do manage to make their parodies succeed in differing ways, such as a genuine love for the source material or simply just to roast what's popular. And you'll perhaps find no better examples of this than with Season 7's 3 Kings and Season 16's Emmy-winning episode.
So I went to the library and picked up 3 books by the greatest author of the last 1,000 years, Stephen King.
So, like Peter said, 3 Kings centers around parodying 3 works of prolific author Stephen King. Never has there been a man more closely related to the question, what kind of substances was he on when he wrote this? But the man does have some absolute classics under his belt, such as the coming-of-age story Stand By Me.
This is way better than Playboy. Do you guys want to see a dead body?
A story about having the best summer of your life with your pals and a corpse you find in the woods. I still remember finding my first summertime corpse, mostly because the image of it haunts me day and night. Ah, childhood.
We never forgot that wonderful summer, and eventually we all went our separate ways.
Then there's King's delves into the horror and thriller genres with works like Misery, where a psycho fan ends up holding her favorite author hostage.
How could you? He can't be dead! Snuggly Jeff cannot be dead! Ah!
Honestly, my worst nightmare. I know it's only a matter of time until someone kidnaps me until I agree to go back to my old look with the hoodie. And finally, Family Guy shows some love for what many consider to be King's opus, The Shawshank Redemption.
He was a fat drink of water. The kind of drink of water that you know your friend got from the bathroom and not from the kitchen.
I bet you didn't know that a story about the indomitable will of the human spirit could also be funny. The story of redemption and escaping from prison is a harrowing one, but that doesn't mean you can't laugh at farts along the way.
Boggs never walked again, and Andy's farts never made a sound again.
That's kind of the beauty of what makes this parody episode so special. It manages to mix a familiarity with the source material with observational comedy that's funny from the jump, but extra funny if you're in the know. You can tell the writers of this episode have a deep love for King's work, which allows this episode to be an homage as much as it is a parody. In a way, it succeeds at introducing these stories to a new audience, while also not hesitating to poke fun at them as well.
Boy, that is a major hole in this story. Okay, take the body.
That's what makes episodes like this stand above other parodies. It doesn't come from a surface-level understanding of what's being spoofed, but a deeper appreciation that makes the jokes much smarter and funnier. But sometimes viewing things in broad strokes can be funny, which is essentially what the show does with Emmy-winning episode.
Family Guy has been around since 1999, and whenever it's time for the Emmys, they don't give us one. I'm sick of it.
So in order to remedy that issue, the family decides to just copy other Emmy-winning shows in hopes that it'll give them their first big award. I'd say that if they can go at least one episode without beheading someone, it'll be a step in the right direction. The public loves classy comedies, not glorified live leak videos.
Lois, I'll still be a parent to our children, but now I'll be a trans parent.
That's the kind of highbrow comedy I'm talking about. But this super timely, super brave, super not offensive spin on the show doesn't win them the admiration they're hoping for, so they decide to pivot to darker, grittier television.
I'm your dad, your gentle suburban dad. Oh, what a twist. Shh.
Now, this is more in their wheelhouse. Turns out people actually like the violence in movies over those good old-fashioned values. Honestly, it's their duty to contribute to the degradation of society, because that's how you win an Emmy.
Now take off all your clothes so we don't get blood on them when we kill that cop in the desert.
But that doesn't win them an Emmy, so it's time to try Plan C. Random bullcrap, go!
We're gonna try for every single Emmy category, starting with Best Stunt Performance.
But even after all that, they still can't win an Emmy. Almost like it's a conspiracy. Wow, so this is what it feels like to be insane. Now I get why so many people believe in nonsense. So invigorating.
It's like there's some kind of secret society that takes all the awards and is keeping us from getting one.
Well, either that or the litany of complaints the viewers have had with the show. I guess it doesn't come as too much of a shock that the show that had a baby get pregnant and a father try to marry his son doesn't get honored too much.
Your show sucks.
So this episode is actually not only a parody of other wildly successful shows, but also a bit of a self-reflection on the show itself. You may think an episode about making fun of Emmy-winning shows would come from a place of anger, but that's not really the case. The show knows what it is and isn't really keen on changing that. Its gross-out humor and adult themes are what put it on the map, and if the Emmys don't feel the need to recognize it, then nothing's stopping the show from taking swings at other winners. So while this episode took some of TV's most popular shows and whittled them down to just surface-level impressions, it was done in a way that didn't actually come off as bitter because it also uses these parodies to poke fun at itself. It's one of those rare times the show parodied with a purpose, and we think it succeeds because of it. But who says Family Guy can't be emotional and can't nail human themes? Really, who said it? Don't feel embarrassed. I'm not mad at you, just disappointed in a way that can never be remedied. But the show has, on multiple occasions, tackled heavier themes like mortality and making the most of our time on Earth because it can all be gone in an instant. Oh, also Death is there. He kinda helps tie everything together. The two episodes we're of course talking about are Season 3's Death Lives and Season 9's Friends of Peter G.
Tomorrow's your anniversary.
Ah, crap. If Lois finds out I'm ditching her to play golf, she'll hit me with a frying pan.
So both episodes start with Peter doing something he shouldn't. In this case, he decides to go golfing with his friends instead of being with Lois on their anniversary. Yeah, I'm with Zeus on this one. He deserves to be smited.
It'll be fine.
And it's due to this that he gets to see Death again, who takes him on a near-death experience to remind him of how much Lois means to him. I don't know if Death gets sick days, but now would probably be the time to use one.
Well, when am I gonna die?
About 2 years after your wife divorces you.
What the hell are you talking about?
So Death takes him on a nice little trip down memory lane where Peter begins to realize how much he loves Lois, and where Death realizes that he's a much bigger romantic loser than he thought.
Why should I help some guy save his marriage when I can't even get a girl?
Out of the goodness of your heart? Or whatever that thing is between your exposed ribcage? But they manage to strike a deal. Peter helps Death get a date, and Death doesn't take Peter to whatever afterlife he's destined for.
Actually, he wanted to ask you something.
Amy, you want to go somewhere and grab a coffee?
Peter might actually be a better matchmaker than Cupid. Death would probably know. I think they both work in the embodiment of natural occurrences department. And now, with the help of Death and a fire lit under him, Peter gives Lois an anniversary gift she'll never forget. The concept of using a near-death experience to atone for your sins isn't exactly new, but it doesn't mean it can't be any less moving. This episode uses the concept to show us Peter and Lois's past, not only to show how much they can mean to one another, but as a pretty nice narrative vehicle for Death. Here, Death isn't just a tool to have Peter learn his lesson, he's an actual character. He is a tool, but more in the metaphorical sense. Also, personally, we just think that stories that convince people to change by looking at the past instead of the future can be a lot more impactful. What's that? I'm gonna die if I don't do this thing? Well, better do that thing. It means a lot more if someone can come to that conclusion by looking at what was done right in the past rather than having a looming ultimatum over their head. And while that doesn't make Friends of Peter G a worse episode, it does make one that maybe isn't as narratively interesting.
This court sentences you both to 30 days of Alcoholics Anonymous.
So after a drunken incident at a movie theater, Peter and Brian are forced to attend AA until they can get their drinking under control, which is exactly what a nerd would do. Instead, he decides to go full-on chat and get his AA buddies drinking again. Actually, you know what? I might have to go with the nerds on that one. That's pretty messed up.
You all stopped drinking because you were hurting your loved ones. But you can't hurt them if they don't know you're drunk.
Yeah, good luck convincing your liver that you're not drunk. That guy's the one who gets hurt the most, and he sees everything. So they turn AA into their sanctuary to get drunk at, even fooling Joe.
Wow, you guys, I'm impressed that you're taking your sentence so seriously.
That's a pretty neat trick. Maybe if most drunk people broke into song and dance when they're drinking, then nobody would know they're drunk. Oh wait, drunk people already do that. That's actually how Wicked became a thing, believe it or not. Just one big bender while watching The Wizard of Oz.
You okay to drive?
Oh, yeah, I'll be fine. I'll crank the heat, roll up the windows, and blast the lullaby channel. I'll be fine.
But he ended up not being fine, if you can even believe it, crashing headfirst into a tree and requiring another near-death experience from his old pal Death.
Peter, I'm gonna show you where your life is headed if you keep drinking as much as you do.
Hey, don't threaten Peter with a good time. But it turns out that a lifetime of drinking isn't all sunshine and rainbow-shaped puke trails, as Peter becomes a bitter drunk who also sleeps with his boss, Angela.
I wish I'd never touched a drop of alcohol in my life.
Never touched a drop, huh? Well, guess what? I'm gonna show you that, too.
It turns out total sobriety is actually just as bad, if not worse. If a black liver is the cost to pay to avoid becoming a huge geek, then maybe it might just be worth paying. So what's the key to avoiding both of these outcomes?
It's called moderation. You don't have to give up the booze cold turkey. You just have to be responsible with it.
We get what he's saying, but isn't that kind of the purpose of the liquid that makes you drunk? To make you drunk? Oh, he's one of those I like it for the taste liars, isn't he? So Peter learns a similar lesson as the last one, but the road to get there is quite different. It plays out way more like a PSA, with Death outlining exactly what Peter needs to do to avoid this horrible fate, rather than Peter really coming to the conclusion on his own. The threat of becoming abusive or lame is enough to scare him somewhat straight, but there's not as much of an emotional connection here as there was with Death Lives. Of course, this is just a small part of a much bigger episode, but the way these episodes utilize Death and his whole shtick is definitely noticeable. And there's perhaps no more beloved series of episodes in Family Guy than the Road 2 episodes. Usually revolving around Brian and Stewie's wacky adventures across countries, time, and space, these episodes have become some of the most iconic and well-regarded in the series. And we haven't gotten a new one in nearly 10 years. Clearly the pressure to deliver is a daunting one. But the formula's largely stayed the same. You just need Brian, Stewie, a journey, and maybe a song if you got time for it.
Whenever. Damn it, will you two just get in the time machine?
But aside from that, has the style of the episodes changed much as time went on? Well, let's find out by taking a look at what many consider to be the best one, Season 8's Road to the Multiverse, and compare it with the most recent one, Season 14's Road to India.
You ever heard of the multiverse theory, Brian?
Well, of course I have, but I'm wondering if you have.
So, not content with just hopping around through time, Stewie invents a device that allows him to visit other universes. If you're keeping a list of what this kid is capable of, it goes multiverse travel, time travel, weapons, and then way down at the bottom is using the toilet. Some of our greatest geniuses stayed in diapers all their lives. Gave him more time for thinking and pondering.
This is amazing. Can we see more universes?
Well, I haven't tried yet, but I don't see why not.
And so the duo do just that, hopping across multiple different realities and alternate timelines. They see all the multiverse has to offer, or at least what the animators felt like drawing, but once they reach their limit, they try to return home, only to find it to be a lot more complicated than they imagined.
Why didn't that thing take us home? I don't know. I told you, it hasn't been fully tested yet.
See, Brian's a bad influence, always peer pressuring you into using your inventions before they're properly tested. You have no idea the number of people I've had to cut off for that exact reason. So they continue to hop from reality to reality, with some being pretty mundane and others being heaven on earth.
Suddenly I feel all sweet and warm and fuzzy. It seems we're in a universe where everything is drawn by Disney.
Stellar foreshadowing on the show's part. It's just too bad the show didn't start looking like this after Disney acquired it. To be fair, no Disney movie has looked like this in over a decade. Now it's all 3D and bean mouths. But as they grow more and more tired from dimension hopping, they eventually find a world they're satisfied with. Well, Brian kinda calls an audible on that one.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, Holly, let's go. This guy's a freak.
Glad to see the opinion of Brian remains the same in every universe, but the two are finally able to figure out how to get home after talking some quantum computing with Stewie's dog self.
Did you have the shuffle button on? Oh my god. There you go.
It's like explaining how to use an iPhone to your parents. So it's not hard to see why this episode is not only considered to be the best Road 2 episode, but possibly the best episode, period. It more than delivered on every rule we outlined. Brian and Stewie go on a timeless adventure, they sing a little song along the way, and they pull a lot of great comedy out of all these different scenarios. And don't forget about all the different types of animation. Seriously, the multiple different styles of animation here are incredibly impressive, mimicking everything from Disney to Robot Chicken. It's easily the show's most ambitious episode to date, and one that more or less became the measuring stick for any future Road 2 episodes. So how exactly does Road to India measure up?
Look, I know it's crazy, but I honestly feel a connection to this woman. More than I have to anyone in a long time.
So things start with Brian falling in love with a woman working tech support in India, so he decides to go on a journey there to find her.
And I have to be with her. Stewie, I'm going to India.
If your first instinct after talking to a girl for a week is to buy a plane ticket to go across the globe, here's a word of advice. Don't. It's a good word that'll save you a lot of time and money. But Brian and Stewie decide to anyway, and on their journey, they take in all the wonders that the gigantic country has to offer.
This is wonderful, isn't it, Brian? It's so tranquil, I'm tearing up.
Yeah, it's gonna be one of those episodes. So if you're expecting to see a reflection of India outside of many of its stereotypes, well, just remember that good word I told you about earlier.
Hit the red buttons!
So after enough traveling through the country, Brian finally gets to meet his call girl face to face.
I can't believe this! Why are you here?
Because I was having a technical issue. With my heart.
Stewie has gotta start carrying around one of those leashes with a muzzle when they go on these trips. You know, just for the safety of everyone's ears. But Padma seems genuinely taken with Brian, and the two decide to marry without really thinking about how Brian's gonna pay for it. He probably spent his life savings just for one single coach ticket to get here. Luckily, there's a very popular game show that can give you exactly $1 million.
Who wants to be a millionaire?
Ah yes, the show where intellect and smarts is rewarded, and stupidity and ignorance gets you taken out back and beaten up in the parking lot. Can you guess which one of these best relates to Brian?
D. Jiminy Cricket. Final answer.
I'm not saying I would have gotten that one right either, but if you go out on the first question on one of these shows, you might have to be shunned from public life. So after realizing Brian was dumb enough to fly here and not know anything about the country, she decides to leave him.
I am deeply touched that you came all this way to find me. But the truth is, you and I have very little in common.
Yeah, like your species. That really needs to start being the deal breaker for these girls. So while this episode does technically have some of the same elements as the other Road 2 episodes, it doesn't always feel like one. The journey's less about Stewie and Brian and more about Brian's quest to win over Padma. Additionally, the setting and location doesn't always feel utilized to its full potential, relying mostly on low-hanging fruit for much of its observational comedy. And despite the episode taking place across the globe, it hardly ever really feels like a journey. There's no real challenges or hardships for Brian and Stewie to overcome, which we think could have been added instead of having a Peter subplot about bingo. Stay in your own lane, buddy. These episodes are for the baby and dog. It's not a terrible episode by any means, but for one carrying the Road 2 mantle, it does come up a little short. So what's the takeaway from all this? We would say it's up to your own preferences if you believe newer Family Guy to be as good or worse than earlier seasons. It's all subjective, but it is interesting to see where the show's priorities and storytelling lie nowadays. But let us know what you think about the modern era of Family Guy, and let us know what your favorite seasons are. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any great Family Guy videos.